Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our presentation on distraction-free learning and everything that our district has done to prepare for this transition for the new school year. Today, we have several of our school administrators and teachers with us that have been involved in the process and to get us ready again so that we can take on this new law that all schools are now required to comply with as we begin the 2025-2026 school year. I'd like to start first with an agenda of this webinar and what you can expect and what information you'll be receiving. And we'll guide you step by step on everything again that we have done, what the law is requiring us to comply with. And at the end, we also have taken steps to allow for community members to present questions. And we want to address those questions at the end of the presentation as well. So first, we'll just be giving an overview of the distraction-free schools policy and how that coincides with the law. We'll talk about a timeline for implementation. We'll talk about how the law came to be very briefly. We'll talk a lot about what we did here in the district to complete the research on best practice and what a distraction-free learning environment looks like. We'll discuss some of the work and the success that we have seen even before the policy became law at Goff Middle School. And then we'll look prospectively into this year at what the implementation of the policy will look like at Columbia High School, Goff Middle School, and all of our elementary schools. Towards the end, we'll talk about how all families can contact their children throughout the day. We'll talk about exceptions both within our policy and within state law, those exceptions and how they would apply and what that process would look like. And again, as I said a few minutes ago, we will address the questions and answers that we received at the end of this presentation. So first, all cell phones and internet-enabled devices must be and will be prohibited throughout the school day for all K-12 students starting in September of 2025. And again, this new distraction-free schools policy complies with New York State law. Again, it is essentially a bell-to-bell, phone-free ban from schools, and this does include smartphones, smartwatches, and other internet-enabled devices. And the most important part that we ask families to remember that this is intended to create a more focused, engaged learning environment free from distractions for our students. Time and time again, we have seen that data and research on this has shown that schools that have been progressive in already implementing this type of learning environment have seen great strides in re-engaging students in their learning in the classroom. A bit of a historical timeline on what our district has done to get to this point. So in September of 2023, Goff had put together an initiative to ban cell phones and personal electronic devices during the school day. The success from that also pivoted then into a committee being formed, knowing that potentially this law was coming as Governor Hochul was discussing it outwardly with stakeholder committees around the state. Columbia put a committee together to start to research what might this look like at our high school level. In January of 2025, Governor Hochul formally announced a plan to restrict cell phone use in all K-12 schools. And then by May, with the passing of this year's annual budget, New York State did include a statewide ban of all cell phones and other internet-enabled personal electronic devices in public schools. In June of 2025, based on a lot of the research that had been done by our cell phone committee, which again was inclusive of students, teachers, and administrators, we made our presentation of our draft policy to the Board of Education. And in prescription with the law on July 9th, 2025, the policy was approved by the Board of Education to be prepared for it to take effect in the beginning of the new school year on September 3rd, 2025. A little bit of background on the law. Again, May 6, 2025, Governor Hochul announced a statewide ban of smartphones from bell to bell in all K-12 schools starting in September of 2025. Governor Hochul did invite this summer many local Capital District schools to come in and talk about the work and how they were going to implement this new policy. And we felt very privileged to be engaged in that conversation. A very special thank you to our teachers union, our administrators, for all taking part in that roundtable. Essentially, the law stipulates that there will be no unsanctioned use of smartphones and other internet-enabled devices on school grounds for the entire school day in all K-12 schools. And later in the presentation, again, we'll talk about what those exceptions are and what the process may look like for the district. It allows local school districts to decide how they're going to implement this. Some schools are deciding on things like the yonder pouches, such as we are going to use in Columbia High School, but it did give districts the ability to make those decisions within their own stakeholder groups. It did secure funding to be made available to schools to initiate and implement this process, and we are fortunate that we have already been awarded that funding from the state based on the plan that we have submitted. It requires schools to give parents a way to contact their kids during the school day when necessary. We'll be talking about how that will happen here in East Greenbush. It also requires teachers, parents, and students to be consulted in developing the local policy. And we are very fortunate to have the voice of several Columbia High School students involved in the process who were very articulate in their feelings and thoughts about how this could be most successful. And it prevents an inequitable disciplinary process. In short, you cannot discipline one student and not another. And again, we have no concerns that that will be happening. But again, some broad parameters of what the law looks like from the New York State level. So I'd like to now invite Mr. Wagner to share some thoughts on what the cell phone committee research process looked like. He was heavily involved as a member of our teachers union, now sits as our teachers union president, and again was a great voice in this process to help us get to this point. So Mr. Wagner, I will turn it over to you for a moment.
Hey everybody, Dan Wagner here. This really began with the great work that happened at Goff Middle School, already implementing a ban, and we had discussions about can we implement this ban at the high school, and at the same time the state union, NYSET, for teachers and school staff had a conference called Disconnected that they held in Albany that was hosted by them, and the governor spoke at that. And we started to hear about the dangers of social media, which most of us had already known. We got to see some firsthand examples. And our prior superintendent, Mr. Simons, attended, Mr. McHugh attended. We had a bunch of our administrators come, we had students come. And it really got the ball rolling. So then we formed this committee right afterwards. And the committee involved Board of Education members, involved students, and involved multiple teachers. Mr. Harkin did a really great job of forming this committee as principal of the high school, and set up a meeting at Troy High School and at Bethlehem High School, who had already also implemented cell phone bans from bell to bell. And we got to see firsthand some of the benefits of that, and any struggles that they did have, they were candid and shared with us. They let us know that the struggles lasted for a few weeks and then it had been very, very beneficial. Bethlehem had had the ban for over a year. So we got to find out about, a year plus that half of school year that we saw them in December. Troy High School had just implemented the ban that year. We even got to have some impromptu meetings with some students. We got to go into some classrooms and get unscripted feedback from the kids, you could say, because, some people give their best display if they know someone's coming. So to be unscripted, have kids really open up to how beneficial the ban was amazing, and really helped sway a lot of the kids that we had, and kids, I mean students, on our committee, because they were the biggest critics at first, but by the end of all of our research and meetings, they became our biggest advocates. In fact, they presented our findings to the Board of Education. The kids really led the way.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Wagner. So part of the research also included looking into a body of research done by a regional professional, Jonathan Haidt. And we thought that it would be meaningful at this time just to share some background information. He is an author of a great book that many of us have had an opportunity to read, and I would invite all of you to take that on if you were so interested as well, but we're just going to share that short clip now.
Hi, this is Jonathan Haidt, the author of The Anxious Generation. The book came out a year ago, and it's been absolutely thrilling to see parents and teachers and legislators around the world taking action. Schools are going phone free. The age of opening a social media account is being raised to 16 in several countries. 1. No smartphone before 14.
One of the things you said that I just thought was so illuminating, you said we're overprotecting our children offline and underprotecting them online.
Parents are getting together with their friends and saying, we're not going to just let our kids slip away from us. We're going to give them back a real world child. This is the way we get out of this, by acting together.
And again, this is a fantastic read, and I invite any community member. This is available widely on many online sources now to be able to pick up the book. It is a very good read and speaks to the data and the impact of what cell phones have really turned us to as a society and as a global society, and the way perhaps that we can make some good corrections moving forward. So again, as we had shared earlier, we had a year prior looked for distraction-free learning and a cell phone ban at Goff Middle School. And we have our interim principal, Mr. Jim McHugh, and our teacher, Ms. Armbruster, here with us. And I was going to kick it to both of you just for a few minutes to talk about the experience and the success that we have seen at Goff Middle School. So Mr. McHugh, Ms. Armbruster, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Coates. In 2022, we really started to look at, our academic data as well as our attendance data, our behavior data, and looking to see what type of discipline issues we were having. There's a large majority that's centered around the improper use of cell phones. So we started to share a lot of research and articles amongst our faculty and staff, and every opportunity that we had to speak and present to our families that we serve, we also shared that research and that data. So initially, we went out and we gave the informational piece of the why. We surveyed our stakeholders, our parents, our students, our faculty and staff to see their opinion on implementing and initiating a cell phone ban. It was really popular amongst faculty and staff. We had a majority of our parents and guardians that were in favor, but they had a lot of questions. And not surprising, our students were not in favor of a cell phone ban. So we really thought about what was developmentally appropriate. And with our students, when we implemented the cell phone ban, the first time that there was a violation, we had that face-to-face personal conversation with that student, reminded them of the policy, escorted them to the locker, asked them to put their phone away. And then we always made contact home to let the parent or the guardian know that we had this interaction with their child. The consequences kind of expanded from that initial. Each time there was a violation, we called home, but we really had over a 90% compliance with the cell phone policy. We had, some students violated, more than one time, but there was a little bit of a tough road. Again, that initial year, we resurveyed our stakeholders at the end of the year, and every stakeholder group, the popularity amongst the cell phone ban increased. It really, last year was year 2, and we really saw a tremendous reduction in the amount of discipline referrals and in the amount of issues. Our students just got acclimated to what the expectation was, and there were really a much smaller amount of violations of that policy.
And as a 6th grade teacher at Goff, I definitely saw firsthand how there was a positive shift in the students' engagement and behavior, with them not having to be as distracted by constantly wanting to check their phones to see who's texting them and checking social media. I could see that they were more engaged and more present and less distracted thinking about what might be going on the online world. And I also saw a decrease in bullying, because there was less of that going on behind in their online worlds and everything. And it seemed like overall students were a little bit less stressed out without having those constant distractions. And like Mr. McHugh said, it seemed like at first there was definitely a pushback from students, but over time, there's barely any that I see having them in the classroom, and they know that they need to leave it in their backpacks. And it doesn't seem like it's much of an issue as the years have progressed with the policy.
Outstanding. Thank you both so much, Mr. McHugh, Ms. Armbruster. Greatly appreciated. So now we're going to transition into, as we enter the new school year, what does implementation look like now that this has become law and it is required statewide? What will be different and how will it affect some of the other buildings? And as we begin this part of the process, I'm going to turn to Mr. Harkin to discuss some of what this will look like at Columbia High School. Mr. Harkin?
Thank you, Dr. Coates. Yes, on Wednesday, our first day of school, students will enter the building. They will get their schedules tomorrow, which I know is an exciting day. They'll all have their schedules. And then on Wednesday, they will report to first period. We will start our day at 7:20. Each student will have an envelope waiting for them at their desk. Inside that envelope will be all the important information they need for the start of the school year and their new Yonder pouch. The Yonder pouches will be numbered so we know which one belongs to each student. The student will then be instructed by myself or the loudspeaker and the teacher in the room to place their cell phone in the Yonder pouch and secure it for the day. The pouch can be then put in their bag, put in their pockets. The phone stays with them for the entire day. And then at 2:00, the unmounting magnets will be put in the lobby. We have 16 magnets. The average magnet can unlock 60 to 70 kids a minute. So we anticipate about a 3-minute dismissal procedure to get all the students unlocked. Out the door they will go. And we will continue that for the remainder of the year. Students, when they arrive the following day, will be asked to lock their phones up as they enter. And again, there'll be a final warning at 7:20 as we start our school day to make sure all your electronic devices are locked up. That includes cell phones, smartwatches, AirPods, any of those devices that are now outlawed in New York State. We're very excited about it. We've heard about all the positive things that have happened in the middle school. We look forward to having that here at the high school. We anticipate it being a great success and look forward to having our students back here on Wednesday with us.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Harkin. So we do not anticipate any big changes in implementation at Goff Middle School, as they have already been through this for a year. And again, we've just heard some of the positive attributes both to learning and school culture that we've seen in the middle school. As we turn to the elementary school, one of our elementary school principals from Green Meadow, Mr. Dan Garib, is with us. Mr. Garib, if you could just give us a brief overview of what our elementary school principals are asking and anticipating to be in compliance with the law from our families. I'll turn it over to you for a moment.
Thank you, Dr. Coates. We're really very fortunate that this has not been a major issue in the elementary schools. Traditionally, we have not allowed cell phones in the elementary school, so we don't anticipate this to be a major shift. We do occasionally see the smartwatches. Those will no longer be allowed under the law and school policy. Our teachers will be reminding students and informing them of this policy that devices are not allowed in school, including watches. If they have them, they'll be politely reminded to put them in their book bags, which will be stored in their cubbies for the day. Individual schools, they all run a little bit differently, but during assemblies, morning announcements, those reminders will also be given. In the rare event that we do have an issue where a student does have a device and they're not being compliant with keeping it in their book bag, the device will be sent to the main office and the parent will be contacted. Again, this is not a major issue, so we don't expect much difficulty implementing this, but all along the way, parents will be kept informed.
Thank you, Mr. Garib. Much appreciated. So we'll now transition to what can communication look like during the day. So we understand that there are many instances where families do need to contact their children during the day, whether it's a child forgot something at home, some emergent situation has happened with a parent or a family member. Please know that every office and every building of our district has a phone available. Support staff, administrators are all aware that there will be probably an increased need in the beginning of the year to give access to those phones. They will absolutely be prepared to assist our students when those issues come up. And similarly, you are also able to call into your school's main office to make sure that a message can get relayed to your child. All classrooms and offices have phones. Again, you cannot dial directly into a classroom, but if there is an emergent situation that needs to get down to a classroom teacher right away to notify a child, offices can call down to the classrooms so those messages can move very quickly. Please know we understand how this has to work, and we want to work together with our families to make sure that everyone can see the benefit of making sure that distraction-free learning can be implemented and we can have our children focus on engagement and teaching and learning in the classrooms. Our high school students will also have access to outside email. This has been a heavy lift for our IT department for this summer, but now they are able, our high school students, to be able to send and receive emails on their school email account during the day. Obviously, we are always working on preparedness for emergency situations. In the event of a school emergency, students will have to follow the school's emergency procedures. They'll need to be focused and listening to all directions from the staff rather than texting or calling parents. And the emergency the emergency response can actually be hindered if people are using their phones. They will also have the ability in the true emergency, especially at the high school level, to talk about an unlocking procedure. Mr. Harkin, I don't know if I could go back to you for a moment just to touch on that briefly. That would be great.
Yes, Dr. Coates, we unfortunately have had issues in the past when we've been swatted here at Columbia High School and have been in prolonged lockdowns. We've had procedures where we've had faculty and staff who are not with students go room to room to take students to the bathroom and do other needs to get their meds and things like that. So all of our bases are portable. So we would then in turn have 16 unlocking magnets that we could start to go to the rooms to unlock the phone so they can start to contact their parents. We anticipate that we could do that pretty quickly. Again, 16 magnets, one magnet a room, it takes about 2 seconds to unlock a phone. So we're confident that we can get those unlocked very quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Harkin. And again, I just think it bears repeating, in a true emergency situation, law enforcement has even reminded all of us that the flow of information is very important, and for making sure that anyone, students and faculty and staff in an emergency, want to be following the directions of law enforcement and the emergency protocols rather than texting and perhaps causing confusion. And again, to make sure that parents and families know exactly what is going on in the event of a real emergency, the district will make sure that we are communicating real time to the greatest extent possible out through Parent Square on text, email, and where possible on phone messages. So exceptions. We realize that there are medical needs or there are unique individual needs where there may be an exception to a student having to carry an internet-enabled device. There is a medical exception form that was adopted by the Board of Education. It's been reviewed by our district physician, that if you have an issue, and we'll use, for instance, a child that uses a cell phone to monitor an insulin pump, if you have an exception that you need the district to review for your child to be able to carry their internet-enabled device, we ask simply that you fill out that form, follow it carefully, submit it to the district so it can be reviewed by the district medical team and subsequently approved. The one thing that we would ask, there would be a lot of peer pressure on students, especially at our secondary level, for those that may be still allowed to carry their devices, to text, to call, to play games on their phone. We just ask for the support of our families. We need to be in compliance with this law, that if your child is one of those students that is allowed to carry their device, to just remind them it needs to be off and away. It needs to at least be away, that when they're going throughout the building, with the exception of when they need to check their levels, again, using the example of monitoring for insulin, so that we all can, again, create that healthy learning environment of distraction-free learning. There would be other unique instances where it may have to go on an IEP or a 504 plan. You would work together with our Office of PPS Services, and they would work through the process of making sure that appropriate documentation is collected, and if found necessary by a CSE or a 504 determination team, that they would have an appropriate strategy for your child to be able to have that device throughout the day. And similarly, for our non-English speaking students, if it is needed for translation services, obviously there's a process in place to make that determination as well. So we are now to our question and answer section. And as I had said in the beginning, these are questions that we were able to collect from the community when we posted the announcement of this meeting. And we're going to run through these questions one by one. There'll be some that I will answer. There'll be some that I will move over to the team and ask for some support in answering. Some of these are more statements than they are questions, but we'll go through these carefully and make sure that we address these for the community. First one being, as a healthcare provider and a parent, fully support this. And we, to be as honest as possible, we can't do this without our families. We can't do it without that support. So we are greatly in gratitude to our families for realizing that, and we very much appreciate this comment. Next one is, there is a rumor that you can actually purchase a magnet online that will unlock it. Also, what is to prevent students from just putting a dummy phone in the pouch? This seems to be all over TikTok. Mr. Harkin, I don't know if you mind taking that one. I'm sure you are familiar as you've done a lot of this research.
So we did talk about this at the other schools, and we anticipate there will be people that will try to do this. You're violating the code of conduct. Unfortunately, we're asking you to be distraction free, so we'll deal with that as they can. Essentially, though, we just don't want kids on their phones in class. We don't want them on their phone. We want them listening to our excellent teachers in the hallways. We want them having communications with talking to their peers, sitting at the cafeteria, having conversations with their peers. So the administration and the faculty and staff is ready to handle this, and we will support those students who are struggling and making these poor choices.
Thank you, Mr. Harkin. Next question, will parents be able to email their students at the school email address? So as I had shared earlier, our endeavor was to be able to open email at Columbia High School. We have initiated the process to be able to do that. It should work throughout the year. Obviously, if you're trying to email your child throughout the school day and email doesn't seem to be going through, please reach out to your building administrators so that they can look into it further. But we are not anticipating any issues with that. Next question, how many devices will be available to unlock pouches, and where will they be in relation to the exits so students don't miss their buses in the afternoon? Mr. Harkin, I know you shared that one earlier. If you don't mind giving a reminder on that, that'd be great.
So the Yonder Corporation came and did a walkthrough of our site. They recommended 10 magnets. We indeed bought 16. They will all be located in the main lobby. There are some bolted on the walls, and we also have stands. Though a student can walk by, they'll be staggered. Again, it takes 2 seconds. So you're talking about 30 students can be unlocked in a minute. And then with times 10 is 300 students a minute. And in just under 3.5 minutes, the entire school can be unlocked and out. The buses will be staying late the first week anyways, as they're always confusion about what buses our new students ride, and the transportation department has always been great, and they'll have people up here to help support kids get on the bus, but we do not anticipate this delaying our dismissal at all.
Great, and I think you addressed the next question for us, so I appreciate it. So the next question was, do you think this will slow entry at the start of the school day, and will there be any way of making sure all devices are off and away? Mr. Harkin, you want to just pick up the last part of that one?
Yeah, so again, we are going to allow our students to be on the honor system when they arrive. We're going to be asking them to show us their pouch, making sure that it's in there. And then again, people that are not able to follow that will have to meet with us individually, and we'll go through our plan to make sure that their phone is secure each day. But we do not anticipate losing any instructional time while we either prepare to start our day or unlock our day.
Great, thank you. And if you don't mind partnering with me on the next one as
Sure.
well. Next one reads, in the event of an active shooter, how will you be ensuring my children have immediate access to their phone? If this is not being ensured, then the policy will not be adhered to or enforced. Obviously, as I had shared a moment ago, law enforcement has trained us very deeply that many times making sure that not just students, but staff are focused on the instructions of emergency personnel is of vital importance. And we are hopeful that in the event of a true emergency that will happen. But also, as Mr. Harkin said, there is protocol in place to make sure that with those 16 magnets that we have available, that they would be able to go around and unlock as necessary. Beyond that, Mr. Harkin, I'll kick it over to you again.
Again, we're just doing our professional development this week and the trainings that we've received. Our teachers, our faculty, our staff are prepared to handle an emergency, and your students need to listen to what the faculty and staff are telling them. And as soon as it is safe, we will unlock the phones and allow them to contact you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Harkin. Next question is, our staff, are staff going to follow the same policy as students have to at Columbia High School, such as not having any personal electronic devices in their desk, on their person, or anywhere in the classroom except in a Yonder pouch, just like the students? So staff will not be required to place phones in a Yonder pouch. I think we just need to remember that staff play a very different role in our buildings than students do. However, we have a universal expectation and an ask of our staff to try to model good behavior for our students, minimize the use of phones, make sure that if there is an instance where they do need to use their phone, to move to a conspicuous location where they're not in the eyes of students, where it would be in their faces that why does a teacher get to use it or a staff member get to use it versus us not being able to. And I am fully certain that our staff will follow through and make sure they model that behavior for our students as well. The next question addresses much of the same. Will teachers be also following a distraction-free policy? Because there have been many times I've been in class and teachers are on their phones for non-school purposes. And I know this because teachers also didn't stop kids from going on their phones. I get that teachers are adults, but when it comes to learning, some staff don't care to take action. And if students aren't allowed to even have phones sitting in their backpack, they would need a pouch for it. I don't see why teachers should still be on their phones. And again, I am very confident that our staff will help model good behavior for our students. Next question, how does one go about children who need special accommodations, such as medical emergencies, mental disorders, such as PTSD, anxiety, etc.? As I had spoken about earlier, the medical exemption form is on our website. You can go on our website and find that medical exemption form. There's some appropriate documentation that we would ask that would go with it. You could submit that to your child's school, and we would help go through the process of reviewing that for potential approval. Why can't students just keep their phones in their bags instead? To have that many students rush to get their phones at the bell and for them to rush to the bus is not good. What happens if they miss their bus due to having problems unlocking the patch? What happens if they forget their phone? What happens if there's an emergency? What happens when when you have students leaving classrooms as an excuse to call the parent in the office? And how does that make the students more productive? What if a student doesn't agree and keeps their phone on them for safety reasons? Mr. Wagner, you were on the committee for reviewing this as well. We had students on the committee, either Mr. Wagner, Mr. Harkin. If either of you wanted to weigh on this, please, I invite you to comment on this question.
There's a lot of questions in there. Well, I understand the questioning. Students have been able to have their phones even in their bag. We've had a policy where they should not be on their phones. It becomes a losing battle, and that's one of the reasons that the state and the governor stepped up to make it a mandate, to make it a distraction-free environment from bell to bell. We have, I think, plenty of magnets for students to be able to unlock their phones at the end of the day. As Mr. Harkin said, we've ordered more than Yonder believes that we even need. And, you know, students can email parents from their computers if they need to get in touch with them during the day. If an emergency does happen, as you said multiple times, Dr. Coates, law enforcement has stressed that students should be listening to the adults in the room for what should be happening. So we don't want them going on their phones. Mr. Harkin mentioned the swatting incident. I was here when that swatting happened, and the kids were on their phones right away. They weren't listening to all the instructions. It created more problems than any solutions. So I think that it'll be a couple of weeks of some hiccups some pushback about maybe kids leaving class, but the schools that we visited said that it became seamless and it became just part of, we're used to not using the phones, and they're not leaving to constantly make phone calls. They're not leaving to constantly contact home. It's this ease that you could easily contact home that they've gotten so used to that they have to ask questions about every single thing. We're trying to teach students to be independent thinkers and to become adults. And at the high school, they're getting closer and closer to adulthood. They can't be asking every single question to somebody their whole lives. They need to be able to learn how to be independent. So that's another reason to disconnect as well. I don't know if you want to also go any further, Mr. Harkin.
I think you covered it. And, you know, if a student forgets their phone for the day, that's fine. They're not going to be distracted. Their phone will be sitting home. But, you know, obviously, if it continues to be a pattern, we'll have to have a different conversation with that student. But we really don't anticipate it. Like Mr. Wagner said, both Troy High and Bethlehem said it took them about 2 weeks for the students to really get used to it. And now it's seamless and it's a part of their day and their institution. And they could not have spoken more highly about all the positive things that are happening now that their kids aren't on their phones all the time.
Thank you both for that input. Next question. What about devices like a Verizon Gizmo watch, which is not internet enabled in the traditional sense and can be placed in a school mode during school hours, which limits functionality to a standard watch and the emergency call button to parents only? It is unclear where this stands on the policy since it doesn't seem to meet the criteria for restriction, but is unclear. So the essence behind this legislation is distraction-free learning. While I can't speak exactly to the Verizon Gizmo watch because I'm not that familiar with the technology, I would encourage parents not to use a Verizon Gizmo because, again, we are going for distraction-free learning. And if this is something that potentially could be used to call home, we have so many other mechanisms where a child can be able to contact their parents. They can call from an office. They can email at the high school level. We just feel very confidently if we're moving to the good place of distraction-free learning, we would encourage parents not to use these types of devices. With that, I would like to thank all of our panelists, our administrators, our faculty that took part in being able to share this information with our families today. This was a lot of time out of your schedules. We're getting ready to open a new school year, but we also realize the importance of sharing as much information as we possibly can. Please make sure, families, beyond even this webinar, that you look at our website. We've been trying to put out as much as we could as the process was ongoing through the committee research throughout the spring and even into the summer. Again, if you have questions, if you need help, please reach out directly to our principals as we start the new school year. We are here to partner with you. But again, to close in summary, the school and the district feel very confidently that distraction-free learning will be of great benefit to your children. It will open a great school year, and it will allow your children to engage more deeply in their learning and with their classroom teachers, where we really need to focus on making sure that we create the best environment for them possible. So with that, we're going to end, and thank you to all of our families that took the time to go through this review with us. And again, thank you to all of our panelists as well.